take a minute to consider, how do we notice poetry? So this is a poem that we've read. We've looked at it in class. It's Fetch by Amy E. Skolansky. Let's read it again together just so that we can get the sound of it. And then let's talk about ways we can notice this poem. Fetch. It's the ball, that good old tennis ball. I chase it down. I bring it back. Chase it down. Bring it back. Down, back. The ball. Throw the ball and I'll fetch. All right, so when we read this poem, now if we're going to take a minute to notice it and think about the things that we know about writing poetry, one of the things that we can notice are the ways that the words work. So I'm going to write words up here because when I'm studying poetry, that's one of the things that I notice. The thing that struck me the most about this poem, the first time I read it, was the word I. Because when I got there, I thought, I chase it down, I bring it back. That doesn't really sound like a human. And then it's down here again, owl. And what I've realized with these words is it's written from the dog's perspective. So I'm going to jot that down. That's kind of a fun way to approach a poem, is to use it from the first person but not make it a human perspective. Something else that I noticed about this poem, especially when I've read it out loud, is that I say the ball a lot. So when I'm studying it and when I'm noticing it, I'm going to go back and I'm going to notice all the times that the poet uses the ball. And then down here. 3 times in a row. There's a lot of repetition in this poem. It's something that I'm noticing. And when you read poetry, I bet that you might notice that poets repeat words quite a bit. So those are 2 ways that I notice words. I'm listening for the thing that I hear, and I'm also listening for things that surprise me when I'm looking at the words. I was surprised by the pronoun I, and I definitely heard that repetition. Another thing that I notice when I'm reading poetry is the structure. So let me go ahead and write that up here. I notice the structure. Now the structure is the way that it looks on the page. This does not look like the books that we read. And it really doesn't look like a lot of the other kinds of poetry that we've read. When we look at this on the page, it looks different. So right away, the thing that I notice is I notice that it goes back and forth. Like it's not all in a line. It's not one line and then right underneath it. All these lines are not like in a line, in a row. So there's all this space here. And there's all this space here with this line far over. And it goes down and back. It feels like the poem feels like it's fetching. Down, back. Down, back, down, back. And the lines do that also. The lines go down and they come back. They go down and they come back. So I'm going to write over here that the lines are not in a row. And it makes it feel like it's going down and back. There's also all this empty space here and all this empty space up here. That empty space is called white space. And I notice that when I'm reading a poem. It makes me read it different. This line, it sounds like this. It's the ball. The ball. So you can notice the structure of poems as you're reading. The third thing that I notice that I like to watch for are conventions. Conventions are things like punctuation, or it can also be when words are written like in all capital letters. So when I look at this, again, I'm looking for the thing that strikes me or surprises me, something that's set apart. I notice this last word right away because it's bold, it's bigger, it's in all caps, And it's the only exclamation point in the whole poem. We have to remember that poets don't do anything by accident. So when I notice this about fetch, I know there's a reason. The poet is trying to make my voice do something. In this case, I think it's trying to make it loud, and it's adding excitement. So I'm going to note that about the conventions. When you read your poetry, when we come back and you're reading some of your other poems, I'd like for you to read it for the words, the structure, and the conventions. And you can even write these 3 words up on your page to help you remember to read for those things.